In this video, we'll be watching Asmongold react to one of my videos in which he disagreed pretty heavily with a lot of the opinions based in there. So, some context, this is top 10 strongest faction leaders in lore, a video which I knew would be contentious from the very start because, for one, power scaling videos are just ripe for debate. No one really agrees on everything. There's so many things to take into account, and the writing teams rarely keep power levels consistent. That much is super true in World of Warcraft as well. So I knew I was probably going to miss some stuff, because you can't really account for everything. When I made the video, I did look into every single faction leader. I also made a tier list. Here, I'll show it on screen. The tier list... Oops. Is this the correct one? Okay, so what we have here is, actually I don't think I have my mouse shown. We have basically what appears in the video. But, I went through and looked up the power levels and, feats of strength of every single faction leader in the game. So I did a ton of research for the video. But that also meant I missed some stuff. I didn't do super thorough research on all 10 spots. I missed a couple of things, which I'll explain as we go into Asmongold's reactions on the video. Also, point number 2, there's lots of contention already with power scaling, but also, the average WoW player doesn't know very much about lore anyway. So I did try my best to, super explain concepts that I was totally just skipping. So that kind of led to the strongest faction leaders in WoW's history.
Okay.
And in order for a character to even qualify for this list, they need to have been a leader of one of the races or factions at one point in World of Warcraft's history, from vanilla WoW onwards, or a co-leader.
Alright.
And at number 10, we have Vol'jin.
Wait, what?
Vol'jin was a former war chief of the Horde who died at the Broken Shore to the hands of a single Felguard. So his death wasn't super grand, but he does have a nice baseline to start this list off on when it comes to strength and accomplishments. You see, Vol'jin is what's known as a Shadow Hunter, which is a super elite troll that's basically a combination of Hunter, Shadow Priest, and Shaman.
That's fucking stupid, number 1. Number 2, this is so... Yeah, right. This Vol'jin got killed by trash mobs.
Vol'jin is a Shadow Hunter. Some little more... context to that. The Shadow Hunters are an elite type of troll. There's not even that many of them. Just becoming one of them itself is an accomplishment. So in lore, he's pretty strong. Definitely way stronger than the average foot soldier. And dying to Felguards and stuff, well, I mean, we did get some context later on that he died because of magic from the Maw. One of the death gods wanted him dead, so he died. And also, the power scaling of trash mobs doesn't really translate over to lore very well. So that's kind of irrelevant to an extent. He's at the number 10 of the spot. He's super low. But I can guarantee you, every single other spot below him would also die to a Felguard as well. I could even bring up the list. This very small list over here. So we have below Vol'jin, we have Mechatork, would also die. Carney, I don't know how to say his name correctly. Bane, definitely Anduin. All these people, die to trash mobs. And the ones who don't are the ones above Vol'jin, basically. And even then, maybe Sylvanas might have a word with them.
At least Varian died to Gul'dan. What the fuck is this?
I mean, technically, Varian was already dying to the trash mobs as well. Not that that really matters. I just wanted to point that out for no reason, I guess.
Trash mobs!
With Bwomsamdi himself providing him his Shadow Priest powers.
Yeah.
He also has features of the Monk class, as he trained with Terran Zoo himself to learn how to use his bare hands as a weapon. So that's already 4 of the 12 base. Oh yeah, Vol'jin, he was kind of Mary Sue-ish. He already had the benefits of 3 classes, and then he also learned how to be a monk in the book Tides of Darkness. I think it's what it's called. Here, let me bring up the title real quick. Yeah, this little book right here. I remember I read this book, and I wasn't the biggest fan of it. Nothing really happens. It's just kind of a fluff piece that explores Vol'jin's character more, and doesn't really contribute very much to the lore, other than giving some nice feats of strength for Vol'jin and saying, hey, he's also part monk, and he's really good at it as well. Classes covered, which is quite the accomplishment for anyone in Warcraft lore.
Truly
and
incredible.
Makes him much more powerful than the average
Truly
person.
amazing.
Although I'm much more partial to actual feats of strength when describing someone's power in these kinds of videos, rather than what we're told how strong they are. Otherwise, Naru would be the strongest things ever, even though they're shown to... a point with the Narus and feats of strength, I tried my best to look for as many feats of strength as I could, but looking through feats of strength for every single faction leader, I kind of missed a couple of them. But Naru is a really good example of why I look for feats of strength in power scaling videos, because in lore, Naru are like top class. Like, they're supposed to be stronger than, like Archimonde and Kil'jaeden. They're super ridiculously strong. However, they don't have any feats of strength to show for it. We're just told they're really strong. There are a couple of things like, people killing them and using them as like fuel and stuff. We know they're strong and everything, but they don't have any like feats of strength in game. And they might have some in lore. Like, I don't know literally every single feat from every Naru possible, but most of the time we're just shown them dying to really mundane things, and we're just told that they're really strong. That's why I value feats of strength over what the characters say how strong they are, because Naru are an excellent example of this. Die all the time. Vol'jin does have a handful of accomplishments. He led the assault on Zul'Aman, Northwatch Hold, and the Horde Rebellion against him.
But like, we watched the Platinum WoW video about how stupid the trolls were. Who cares?
That's fair. It's not really that big of a deal.
Like, you're literally, you're like clearing trash mobs. This is insane.
Garrosh. But his biggest accomplishment for showing his personal strength was his defense of the Shadowpan Monastery as part of the 33. You see, in the book Shadows of the Horde, there was an army of 500 Mogu and Zandalari trolls who were laying siege to the Shadowpan Monastery.
500? That's not
and
that many.
In a ploy to buy time, Vol'jin challenged the army to honorable one-on-one combat, where he would challenge their strongest fighter to a duel. And if he lost, they could basically take the monastery no problem.
That makes sense.
So they sent in their strongest Mogu fighter to challenge him, who lost so bad that they ignored his challenge and decided to rush in with numbers anyway. And Vol'jin personally ended the battle with his bare hands, killing the enemy leader with a single monk punch.
The strongest trash mob.
Then after the battle, he used his healing powers. Yeah, the strongest trash Mogu mob. I will agree, this isn't super good feat of strength. There wasn't really, like, the number 10 spot, I'm totally fine with it being something else. He did defeat a Mogu in lore, especially in the book. They describe the Mogu as being, like, taller than a Tauren. And in lore, Taurens are supposed to be super strong too. Like, Garrosh would use Taurens as ways to move heavy things across stuff, just because each one can lift, like, as much as 10 people. And Mogu themselves are supposed to be stronger than Tauren, so it's kind of a big deal, but honestly, in a power scaling video, when you have, the number 9 spot being so much stronger, it doesn't really matter that much. To bring his human friend Tirith and Korth back to life, which is quite the list of accomplishments from a single battle. On the Broken Shore, it turns out he was actually killed by a Loa of Death, who really wanted to make Sylvanas war chief. And it's heavily speculated that he was raised to a higher being to be almost on par with Alola, and shows up from time to time in BFA. So he definitely has some nice accomplishments under his belt, raising him above normal troll status, and able to fight off a small group of enemies by himself, and the ability to bring people back to life, which definitely earns him a spot on this list. But everyone else is just kind of a monster in comparison.
What a fucking joke.
And at number 9, we have Lillian Voss, who is the current leader of the Forsaken at the end of BFA, and is like a super strong mage rogue. You see, Lillian Voss was raised by a high-ranking member of the Scarlet Crusade. So, here's the thing about Lillian Voss. I didn't really explain this in the video, but she's kind of overly strong. Like, to the point where, why did, Blizzard introduced this character out of nowhere with how strong she is? It kind of almost seemed like an oversight with what she was able to accomplish in the Undead starting zone. She definitely has the feats of strength, but I think they kind of toned her down a little bit later on. So a lot of this is based on just undead starting zone thing, and if you're primarily an alliance player, it's real easy to miss this. But she's like the hidden character who was in the undead starting zone and was just really strong for no reason. And says that she studied stealth, sorcery, martial arts, anything that would make herself stronger. I will say, I love the face he's making to it. That's too funny. But then she died somehow and was raised as a Forsaken. Most likely in an accident or to a disease or something, because I can't imagine anything really killing Lillian Voss.
Bro,
One of her first shows of strength is when you come across her being held captive in a cage, and a member of the Scarlet Crusade comes up and says that she was ordered to be executed by her father.
Okay.
The Scarlet Crusade hates all undead, even those that were previously related to high-ranking members of the Crusade. And Lillian promptly just teleports out of her cage, instantly kills her captor, and then teleports back into her cage so she can sulk for a bit, proving that she was never in any danger at all, and she was right when she told the adventurer that she didn't need any help when you first talked to her. Later on in the zone, you'll come across dozens of corpses of Scarlet Crusade members who are all burning with purple fire.
But they're leveled like 12, man. Like, that's not even a big deal. Like, how's she more powerful than Vol'jin?
In lore, the Scarlet Crusade members are actually pretty strong. Like, they're just Silver Hand members. Or, I might be getting it wrong because I'm just remembering this from, memory. But they used to be like an order of paladins who kind of went astray because they had Dreadlords infiltrate and stir all the crazy ones and put them in charge. And they're all very strong light users. Like, they're stronger than the average person very easily. That's what made them a threat. And that's what makes it exciting that you get to fight them at a low level. That's like Blizzard, like, hey, you get to fight these actual important bad guys in these starting zones. That's like, it was supposed to be a way to, fight real threats at early levels rather than just more kobolds and murlocs and stuff.
Like, and Vol'jin's a bitch too. Yeah, right? PvP? Oh, fuck. She does have PvP scaling. She's low level. Bro, this is BFA. She should be number 1. I didn't even think of that. Oh my god.
Which is a hallmark of Lillian Voss. Because Lillian Voss is some kind of spellcaster.
Alright.
I'm not sure what kind, but it's very similar to DK and Shadowpriest stuff. And she's also a proficient rogue, as she becomes a... What exactly Lillian Voss is completely unknown. She's definitely a spellcaster. She can also use dark magic, which is very reminiscent of Death Knights, almost exclusively. As an in-game thing. And I guess maybe warlocks, but she doesn't use fel magic at all. So it has to be like Death Knight based, necromancer. And she's also a rogue. So, it's either like those two, that she's a rogue spellcaster, basically. It's not a thing that exists in the game. Well, I mean, rogues themselves do use a lot of shadow magic. Maybe she is just a rogue who focuses on spells more than sneaky stuff. A follower in the Order Hall campaign for rogues. And here's the thing about this. She's not a rogue. I forget. She has like a death grip ability. It's in the video. I'll pause it and mention it when it comes up. Scarlet Crusade members.
Yeah, right.
They are not weak. The Scarlet Crusade has a pretty high average. No, the Scarlet Crusade is actually pretty darn strong. I mean, like, darn strong. Tyrion Forgery, he was basically an ex-member, essentially. There's also Alexander, the previous wielder of the Lightbringer. Man, I'm bad with names. And then, of course, the girl on screen, Whitemane, Sally Whitemane. She's like one of the most powerful light users canonically in lore. Like, she's super powerful. She's one of the few people who can just bring people back to life. And when you bring her, that's why they chose her as one of the 4 horsemen for the Death Knight campaign. Because, they know for a fact some people are able to use the light even after they're brought back as a Death Knight. Because that's how the old wielder of the Ashbringer was. He had the corrupted Ashbringer and he could still use the light, even though he was, an undead. And they're like, hey, if anyone can do it, it's this super powerful Sally Whitemane. Power level, as pretty much all of them can use the light.
Yes.
Which makes each Scarlet Crusade member essentially a full paladin or priest. And they are very proficient in the light. In fact, one of the strongest light users is a member of the Scarlet Crusade. or was a member anyway. So, Lillian being able to kill scores of them by herself with a little difficulty is actually quite the accomplishment. Because even the Lich King himself had to put in a lot of time and effort to deal with the Crusade. And during one of the... Yeah, basically the undead... No, the Death Knight starting zone is just the Lich King sending his forces against the Scarlet Crusade. You know, like his new Death Knights that he ends up sacrificing anyway. But even the Lich King can't deal with them easily, because the light does a good job at countering the undead. So the undead... Dang it, I keep mixing up undead and Death Knight. The Death Knight starting zone is basically an example of, wow, Scarlet Crusade, really annoying, but we can deal with them, but not easily. So we gotta throw a whole bunch of resources at them, because they're kind of a big deal. But only kind of. Last quest in the zone, she'll ask the adventurer to escort her to her father. Or you'll walk up a long line of Scarlet Crusade members and just watch a Lillian Voss kill all of them by herself, essentially. Yeah, this is the part. Lillian Voss just runs up. When you start attacking things, she just like death grips the entire room to herself and then instantly kills them all. She's kind of too strong. If there's only one flaw, I mean, if there's one big flaw with Lillian Voss, it's that they made her too strong in this part of the zone. It's super powerful. And when she finally walks up to her dad, who's a high-ranking member of the Crusade, which implies a strong power level as well, she instantly kills his guards and then slowly kills him with little effort. Later on, you'll find out that she's been killing dozens of members of the Crusade in the playground as well. She reappears as a dungeon boss in Skullomance, where she was mind-controlled by a necromancer. Basically, her direct counter as she... I would say Lillian Voss is easily stronger than Vol'jin. Vol'jin, his biggest accomplishment was basically defeating a Mogu in one-on-one combat. And then, you know, he also fought a whole bunch of other things, too. During that battle with the 300, or the 33, excuse me. There was a group of 500 versus 33. But he needed help, and, like, Lillian Voss soloed whole, like, camps of Scarlet Crusade members by herself. Like, the feats of strength are comparable, and one of them is just vastly stronger than the other. She herself is undead, and even then she was able to snap out of it eventually and kill him.
That's some bullshit.
So while Vol'jin definitely had some nice feats of strength, and has the benefits of basically 3 classes, I don't think Vol'jin himself would be able to walk into the heart of the Scarlet Crusade camp and kill a high-ranking member leader by himself. No way he would.
Why not? Like, what do you mean?
There's in the Shadows of the Horde, he fights a whole bunch of what would be basically trash mobs. And he is able to do it pretty well. Even Sourfang can do that. But not, like, by himself. And only groups of, like, 5 or less. You know, once it starts getting a little bit higher than that, then he panics and, like, runs away, which is pretty normal. But Lillian Voss was hunting down, like, armies of Scarlet Crusade members by himself. There's a big difference.
Like, Vol'jin's a fucking... Yeah, he could. Are you kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? Vol'jin would pop off. Like, it's crazy.
So I have to put Lillian Voss just a tiny bit higher on this list.
Okay.
And at number 8, we have Malfurion, one of the leaders of the Night Elves on the Alliance.
Should be like number 1.
Malfurion is basically a super powerful Archdruid and a one-man raid boss, and has quite the accomplishments to back up his high-ranking status.
There's no way.
You see, during the short novel, A Good War, where you read about the Horde's perspective... Okay, so, Malfurion. I totally missed some stuff with him. Basically, I knew a lot about Malfurion already because he shows up a lot in lore. He's a very prominent character. So I had tons of feats of strength already for him, so I didn't think I should look up literally everything about him, because I missed 2 important things, or I guess one of them is more important. So there's 2 feats of strength I missed that should elevate him to a higher power level, based on my own, like, scaling. One of them is that he was able to fight off Archimonde, I think. It happens in one of the books. It's not well documented online. But yeah, he does that. That's not really, I mean, it is an accomplishment because Archimonde's super strong. But it's not mentioned very much. The other one, which is much more important, is him holding up Darkshore after the Cataclysm. Like, Darkshore was going to fall into the ocean, and Malfurion himself holds an entire island connected to the continent. And then later you find out it's Azshara trying to pull it in, and you stop her, and then he can finally stop using everything he has to keep an island, to keep a gigantic zone from falling into the ocean. That is an incredible feat of strength, like super high, ridiculous. The power levels on that are kind of almost seem like an oversight. It's kind of like Lillian Voss. Like, that's too strong. That would require way too much power. Yeah, that's a huge oversight right there. Like, if I had known about that, because, you know, I'm primarily a Horde player. I have a Horde bias, so I miss some Alliance stuff that would be kind of basic. And that's definitely one of them I miss. I did quest through Darkshore, but I never finished the quest in there. I just did like half the zone. So I don't remember the plot point of Malfurion literally holding up the zone by himself, because that would have influenced the ranking of the list for sure. Because of the moving through Ashenvale.
8? Like number 2. Yeah, number 1.
Oh, but also because I already had a whole bunch of feats of strength that put him high up on the list anyway. Like, he has a lot of accomplishments. Based on the ones I knew about, he made the list easily. And since he made the list so easily, I didn't think to really look further into it. You know, a failing on my part when it comes to the research. But in my defense, I did a lot of research. It's, you know, and I thought I already knew enough about Malfurion when I didn't need to dig deeper. So that's where the mistake came from. Every time Malfurion is brought up by a common Horde soldier, they're absolutely terrified of him.
Yeah, Dude, Malfurion is like the most powerful druid of all time.
Yeah, pretty sure, yeah.
What the fuck do you mean? Are you kidding me?
He just kind of shows up every now and then and kills... Oh, I love the little notes my editor puts on screen. Not as whiny as the meme suggests. You know, the whole meme of, Tyrande, I need you. That is just Xavius mocking Malfurion. You know, he's trying to make him sound pathetic, and, you know, because lots of people don't really understand the context of the meme, they just repeat that as if Malfurion himself did it, and that use it as an example of bad writing or voice acting from Legion, when really it was pretty spot on. You know, like, if he's trying to mock him and make him sound pathetic, he did a good job. It was a group of 20 men by himself before running away, or before the Horde people ran away if there wasn't enough people to back him up. During one scene in that book, Malfurion is able to successfully infiltrate the heart of a Horde camp, and is in a room with Saurfang and his guards. And Saurfang is so afraid of Malfurion that he basically accepts that he's going to die then and there.
Of course.
And that there was nothing him or his guards could possibly do to beat Malfurion in front of them, as Malfurion kills his guards and collapses the building. Man, I just gotta say, that book is so good. A good war. It's told through the perspective of Saurfang. And in the book, like, he kills, you know, like, small groups of Alliance soldiers by himself. They show, like, he's super strong. And at one moment, he kills an ambushing druid who jumps on him, you know, as, like, a reflex. He's like, oof, that was pretty bad. And then when you read the Alliance side of it, you see they had planned this whole thing so they could distract Saurfang long enough, just so they can ambush him with that one druid who was a point of view character. Or maybe he wasn't. He was probably just a main character. And then Saurfang kills him. And that was the end of it. I thought that was great. Really showed that Saurfang himself, he's no joke. He's pretty strong. And even he was terrified of Malfurion. I was like, whoa, Malfurion is really strong. They really showed just how deadly Malfurion was in the novel. But even then, they didn't go far enough. And on top of him moments later. There's even one other point in the book where a Blood Elf rogue is a... Oh yeah, I love this point in the book. I really wish I could talk about these moments longer in the video, but it just makes it too long. Basically, he gets ambushed by a Blood Elf, and it's like the perfectly set up ambush, and Malfurion just knocks him down and has a casual conversation with him. He's like, why are the Blood Elves so, you know, against us? We used to have a common ancestor. And the Blood Elf basically just tells him, no. Able to prepare the we don't like you. Ambush. Malfurion was distracted. He snuck up on him perfectly and was in range where Malfurion didn't notice him at all. And when he jumps out and tries to kill him, Malfurion casually deflects his blade and knocks him on the floor, as if a fly tried to fly in his face. And then has a conversation with him before he kills him. He has such supernatural reflexes that he literally cannot be ambushed by normal people.
That's right.
And him and Sylvanas were having DBZ-style fights in the trees, throwing each other 20 feet in the air. He just has supernatural strength and senses, in addition to his ability to control nature itself. The only reason Saurfang was able to strike a killing blow on him is because he was in the middle of a battle with Sylvanas. Oh yeah. In the book, every time Sylvanas and Malfurion meet, Malfurion just ran away. Because Sylvanas is also pretty strong. Like, the scene where the inn gets collapsed on Saurfang, the only reason he survives is because Sylvanas shows up and chases Malfurion off. Like, he just kept running away. And when they did fight, they would talk about how they got thrown through the treetops. And the trees are really big. Like, throwing someone that high is a feat of strength in itself. But that was just kind of a byproduct of both of them having Dragon Ball Z style fights. I really wish they had shown more of that in-game. Like, they did definitely show the novels in-game, kind of. A lot more than they usually do for the books. But it really would have been nice to see Malfurion and Sylvanas. I don't know, they don't really do a good job of showing that in-game either. Never mind. And Saurfang himself is worth about 5 fighters in one. So a super powerful, almost demigod, definite. Oh yeah, and the fact that Saurfang was even able to turn the tide of the battle at all just means that Malfurion and Sylvanas were kind of evenly matched. Which makes sense when you know that Sylvanas had like a super power boost from the jailer. But without that, she really shouldn't have been able to match him at all. It really makes this list. And is only beaten out by people who just have better feats of strength. And at number 7, we have Bolvar, who was the High Lord and Regent in Kingdom of Stormwind during Vanilla WoW when Varian was missing. Now for this list, we'll be going over the strongest versions of these faction leaders, and not necessarily
Bolvar
how strong they
like
were.
Number 17 or something. Like, because like you have like, remember like whenever we had Anduin Wrynn, whenever he was 8 years old? I think Anduin Wrynn at fucking 8 years old in Stormwind Keep probably ranks higher than Bolvar. Like, I don't even want to see this. Yeah, right, dude. Yeah, fucking, this is a joke.
When they were faction leaders.
Yeah.
Now, Bolvar used to be a paladin, but is probably... I mean, Anduin doesn't really have feats of strength outside of the BFA cinematic, where he resurrects people. Which, I mean, that is a big deal. But other than that, you know, I could be wrong. I did look into him like I did everyone else, but I'm not an expert on Anduin. I basically just had him at like the very bottom. He's kind of weaker than just a normal person, to be perfectly honest. He does a very proficient light user, so he has lots of potential, but he never uses it to hurt people. Not stronger than Vol'jin.
No.
He was a decent paladin. He was pretty good too, but he wasn't on the same tier as the number 10 on this list, for example. Just a small little note about Bolvar, since I saw this show up a lot in the comments after the Asmongold video. He was, in fact, a paladin. Not that it matters very much, but it wasn't until after he died and got raised, and then acquired powerful artifacts, that he really came into his own with being a powerful being.
Right, yeah.
And I will be including items and equipment and outside borrowed power for this list.
Yeah, of course.
So technically, High Tinker Mechatork with his mech suit would definitely be counted for this list. I'd say that he was a strong contender. Oh yeah, I put Mechatork at like number 11. It was actually a tough call to either put Mechatork or Vol'jin at number 10. And Mechatork might be stronger. Like, that mech suit is very strong. I kind of forgot the reason. Maybe it was just to have more Horde characters. I don't know. For the number 10 spot with Vol'jin as well. But I think Vol'jin just has a little bit more advantages and feats of strength that put him over a giant mech suit.
Yeah,
I guess so. If we include Vol'jin does have more domination into Bolvar's power, he gains 2 very distinct benefits. Vol'jin has more feats of strength than Mechator, but they're not super impressive. Other than the fact that he has, like, Blomsomdi as his personal Loa. That's neat. He doesn't really do much with it, though, whereas Mechatork was a raid boss. That's a pretty big accomplishment. I don't know, maybe I should have just put Mechatork at number 10. Bits. One of them is the ability to control a nearly unlimited army of undead, and 2 is the enhanced psychic abilities it gives him. As you could see him during the Shadowlands cinematic. The psychic abilities, like, people don't really mention this much when it comes to the Lich King's powers, but like Ner'zhul, the Lich King, Warcraft 3, he was mentioned very heavily as having very strong psychic powers. Like, he controlled all his undead with psychic abilities. He was a psychic user, a psyker, or whatever they're called. It was definitely a part of his arsenal, but they didn't really use it very much. Psychic energy isn't really a thing that's heavily showcased, other than this part where like Bolvar is using it to throw, giant glaciers at throwing gigantic icicles at Sylvanas. That's his psychic powers.
Well, does it matter if you can throw them if they just miss every time?
I mean, yeah.
Like, what's even the point? It's embarrassing.
He also has access to a whole bunch. I know he's just making a joke right there, based on how Bolvar performed against Sylvanas, but actually, if we take it seriously, throwing those gigantic icicles is a pretty big feat of strength. Like, whatchamacallit, one of the biggest feats of strength for Gen Greymane is the fact that he was able to lift a gigantic boulder off of his wife during the burning of Teldrassil, where everyone else had left her for dead, and he kind of just casually picks it up. That was a huge feat of strength, and it definitely made me put him up a little bit. And Bolvar is able to throw 3 of those with his mind. That's a pretty big accomplishment, even if it accomplished all of nothing against Sylvanas. The powerful artifacts and minions, as he's basically responsible for handing over 2 artifact weapons in Legion. One for Fire Mages and Death Knights.
Yeah.
He gives Fire Mages Fel Malorn and is involved in helping Frost. Yeah, he directly gives 2 players their artifact weapons, and he also helps Death Knights, find 2 other ones. He's actually involved in 4 artifact weapons, I believe. But he's only directly involved with 2 of them, which is still pretty great. That's that's one more than most everyone else has. Death Knights. I don't know if there's anyone else who's involved in acquiring more artifact weapons, with Bolvar, than maybe the quest givers who tell you to go get them in the first place. I don't know. I don't really know too much about it. Create the blade. I'd have to research that. If I was making a video, I'd probably just include that and then get the info wrong because I thought I knew better. That's how a lot of the information is. If a video, if something shows up in the video and it's wrong, it's probably because I just thought I knew it beforehand. It's oh yeah, that sounds true, and I write it down. I don't double check it later. It's a bad habit of mine. I know it is. That's where a lot of the inaccuracies come from, because I think I already know. So what's the point in looking it up if I already know the answer, I should make a video one day where I just go over a whole bunch of mistakes from various videos I made that are very obvious in hindsight because I just thought it was obvious at the time.
Yeah,
with the pieces of the broken Frostmourne. He's also able to raise Death Knights. His high-ranking Death Knights can raise Death Knights, and an army of Valkyrie that can create even more undead. And he has gigantic skeletal dragons at his command, which even helps some of his Death Knights acquire further mounts. So the real power in Bolvar is his army, and his army could probably help him defeat all the other spots on this list easily. Maybe.
Except for
there is another person who will appear on this list who was able to take him down. Sylvanas. Individually, with just the Helm of Domination, he definitely has above average power. He could easily be on the same tier as Vol'jin, or much stronger. And of course his great psychic capabilities that allow him to throw gigantic boulders with his mind definitely puts him on a high scale of power scaling. Not as
I honestly, if I fucking played a Death Knight, as soon as I saw that cinematic, I'd have deleted it. I'd have just deleted it. That's bullshit, man. I'd just delete that character, play something else.
As Arthas, though, there are a lot of people who assume Bolvar is just as strong as Arthas, which is not true at all, because Arthas also had the Frostmourne, which was a super powerful rune blade that made him even more overpowered.
Well, also,
Bolvar only has the helm, which I think
Arthas was a fucking badass paladin. Bolvar really was not that badass.
That's true.
Because you would assume Bolvar and Dranosh Sarfang.
Arthas was chosen specifically because he was strong. He was chosen by Ner'zhul to be his champion because he was already kind of a badass on his own.
Are about equal power level. And the Lich King literally fucking one-shot him. The Lich King would have one-shot Bolvar. It would have been no big fucking deal. That's all there is to it. Yeah, no, listen, just admit it, guys. Arthas as the Lich King is probably, the most badass one.
I think only slightly makes him stronger than Malfurion. And even then, I might be being a bit generous putting him above the Archdruid. Although if we add in his unstoppable undead army, he would probably... Malfurion, yeah, he is. With the new information I learned after making the video about a whole bunch of feats of strength that I didn't know about Malfurion, especially the whole Dark Shore thing, he should be moved up on the list. I don't really know where to move him, though. I don't know. In the top 3, at least. But the top 3 is already kind of contentious. Probably take number 1, but I'm kind of stripping him of the army capability and just judging him on his
I would say
Malfurion's
Malfurion's more powerful than Bolvar.
Weapons and artifacts, which puts him at number 7 on this list. So as long as he just doesn't let someone come up to him before his army is able to wear him out, he should have no problem beating anyone. And at number 6, we have Tyrande. This is the other Night Elf leader alongside Malfurion, and she is a very powerful priest who recently got a super buff to become the Avatar
Are you kidding me?
You see, before her Avatar of Vengeance upgrade, she was already incredibly strong, and considered to be on the same tier as Malfurion himself. In fact, part of the reason the Horde never tried to fight the Night Elves in the first place is because they thought it was impossible to take the city as long as Tyrande and Malfurion were both there. When Malfurion was defeated by a tag team of Saurfang and Sylvanas, Tyrande was trying her best to find him in the middle of a gigantic forest, and was able to use her priestly clairvoyance to find his exact location in an instant.
This horseshit, like, Tyrande is like the fucking chosen priestess of Elune, the Night Warrior. Like, if you played Warcraft 3, you know Tyrande has to be in the top fucking 3. I think Malfurion and Tyrande are basically the same power level, right? It depends on what it's... There's not... simp, but it's fucking true.
It is true. Tyrande is really strong. Also, more context to that point. Here, let me show you the picture of, like, the book with Tyrande. I don't know how much you can really see it, but this was the image when Tyrande faces down Malfurion. Basically, not Malfurion, when she saves Malfurion, because Saurfang is just kind of moping over his body. Like, when she finally goes to Darkshore, because she was kept up by something, I don't remember what it was, but she had no idea where the fight was taking place. In the forest, it was like, a normal-sized forest, not what we actually see in-game. The game is a vastly tiny version of what it actually is in lore, and you can't, it's kind of like looking for a needle in a haystack. There was no way she could have known. So she just used her clairvoyance and was like, show me where it is. And then Elune pointed the light, so she went over to it and found the bodies immediately. And then, like, in a second, she disables Saurfang, and then summons a whole bunch of light shards above his head, and is like, tell me why I shouldn't just kill you right now. Essentially, like, she was just in control immediately, and I was like, whoa. That's pretty cool. She doesn't really show too much of this in-game, but then again, I don't really play Alliance, so I'm probably missing some feats of strength there. But she doesn't really have any after becoming the Night Warrior. Like, it's kind of the case with Inara, where we're told she's really strong, and she probably is. It's just, she hasn't really had the opportunity to do anything yet with her Night Warrior powers, and I really, I had to keep consistent with my rules where feats of strength are everything. And her feats of strength were beating up people she could have beat up easily by herself before becoming the Night Warrior. So there are some cool things in Shadowlands that she's doing, but all of this was created, before we knew about that stuff. So still no feats of strength with the Night Warrior stuff. And with the feats of strength I do know about, unless I'm missing something, her spot on the list is pretty spot on, because, like, the people who are above her, besides maybe Thrall, like, they earn their spots above her, assuming, excluding the power of the Night Warrior, because there's no feats of strength, whereas the other ones do have feats of strength that kind of trump whatever she's already done pre-Night Warrior transformation.
So, I mean, she's badass. This is some horse shit, man. Like, they're ranking all the Alliance ones low. Man, this is fucked.
And then, when she got there, she was able to instantly disable Saurfang and freeze him in place with her light magic. And Saurfang himself is equivalent to about 5 average soldiers. This is fucked. So, he's pretty strong, too. It's just, Tyrande is so much stronger.
Saurfang is not strong. He's an old fucking man.
Saurfang, true. In lore, he's equivalent to about, like, 5 soldiers, which is pretty strong. But, not in the same levels of tier as Tyrande. He's strong for a normal soldier, but he's not strong when it comes to, like, demigod-like beings, of Malfurion or Tyrande or Bolvar with the Helm of Domination, etc., etc.
He's like a 64-year-old warrior. Like, I'm sorry, but he's not going to do anything. Like, he's a 64-year-old. Like, really? I'm sorry, but he's an old fucking man. He doesn't do anything. Like, there's no warrior in the entire fucking Warcraft universe that's worth a shit. Like, before you say Brock's...
I think that's true. Like, Broxigar has, like, the best feats of strength when it comes to warriors. There's also Lothar, I think his name, like the Alliance General for the Second War, and probably the first as well. He has some pretty nice feats of strength, but even they're, like, outdone by people who can use magic.
The only reason Broxigar did anything is the axe that Cenarius, who, by the way, wasn't a warrior, gave him.
Yup.
Varian? Give me a fucking break. Varian died to trash mobs and he got disenchanted by Gul'dan?
So, the reason I didn't include Varian, even though he has a feat of strength of defeating a Fel Reaver, is because I fundamentally, disagree with that. I even made a video on it, where I was like, this is bullshit. It's not a very good video. I don't recommend watching it. Especially since I made a very basic math mistake, where I equivalented, I don't think equivalent is even... I basically said 1,000 pounds equaled a ton. I did my math based on that. Where I think a ton is 2,000 pounds. So, that is a pretty bad mistake to make when you're trying to use math to prove a point. But even then, even if you doubled the numbers, it still didn't really work out in his favor. They made him overly strong for that cinematic and then overly weak. Not overly weak. They made him weaker or at power immediately after he pulled off a feat of strength he shouldn't have. The power levels weren't really consistent in that. That's why I didn't include him. Even though it totally fits. That's like the one exception I made because I just think that shouldn't have
warriors
happened.
In this game suck.
And I'm kind of glad Asmongold agrees with that. No one brought up the fact that, lots of people brought up that Varian should have been on the list. Even I don't think so. That's another case that, we're told he's a lot stronger than we're actually shown. Other than that one instance of him defeating a Fel Reaver when he really shouldn't have been able to. And then, after the burning of her city, she underwent a forbidden ritual to gain the dark powers of her god, which seemingly made her more powerful.
Exactly.
You see, we were told she got an incredible power boost. We saw her kill a whole bunch of Horde soldiers afterwards, but she could already do that. And she didn't really do anything that she couldn't have done before. Basically, all she did was beat up Nathanos and a Valkyrie, but she was already stronger than Nathanos and all the Valkyries, and she had the help of Malfurion, who could also do that solo. We haven't really seen her do anything with this new power yet, but we've been told it's very strong, and since she was already equivalent to Malfurion in the past, I thought I'd have to put her a little bit higher on this list, as she should be stronger than her husband now, and should also be stronger than a psychic using Death Knight.
The thing is, though...
And at number 5, we have Thrall, former leader of the Horde.
Are you fucking kidding me, dude? Are you fucking kidding me, dude? Is this a joke, dude? Like, what? Thrall? He should be number fucking 9. You think Thrall could beat fucking Bolvar?
Here's the thing with Thrall. This is why, the feats of strength thing is kind of flawed to an extent. He has feats of strength. But realistically, Tyrande should be stronger than him. But she doesn't have, the feats of strength to really prove it. It's a flawed system, I know. It doesn't really feel good that Thrall is this high. The two mistakes, I'll admit to the video, other than the whole bunch of smaller ones I made, was, I definitely missed some really big ones with Malfurion. And Thrall, his feats of strength don't really feel that good. So I should have just put him lower. It was he has these feats of strength, but, it's probably just an oversight by Blizzard that he was able to do these things, kind of like Malfurion holding up Darkshore. It's more of an oversight, really. He doesn't really have too many, big feats of strength outside of, a couple of ridiculously strong moments. So it doesn't feel good for him to be at a high spot, but, it's kind of a flaw with the system I was using. sticking to the system I have, he kind of deserves this spot. But I'll agree, it doesn't feel good to have him this high. And I kind of wanted to lower him while I was making it, but I didn't because, I wanted to stick to internal consistency with, feats of strength trump everything.
Yeah, give me a fucking break, dude. Thrall could beat Malfurion? Imagine if they Thrall could beat Malfurion. Yeah, right, dude.
Yeah, probably not.
What a fucking joke. Dude, this is horseshit. This is the biggest horseshit list.
Even with, the mistakes I made, the top 10 would still basically be the same. The number 10 spot I didn't really care about. Who's stronger, Mechatork or Vol'jin? It's not really a big deal. I would be fine with putting Mechatork on there as well. But the top 9 spots, the ones that do matter, because they actually have the feats of strength and, the power to back up and to justify their spots on the list. I still think the top 9 spots should be there, but I would probably order Malfurion higher and Thrall lower.
I've ever seen.
Temporary avatar of the Earth. You see, the time period we're putting Thrall on this list in is during the Cataclysm when he was taking over the duties of the Earth Warden for Deathwing, before all the aspects lost their power. And Thrall was given the Dragon Soul in order to shoot Deathwing out of the sky, thanks to the combined power of all the dragon aspects with him channeling the power of the Earth, and Deathwing himself made on the list of the top 10 strongest raid bosses in lore. So, being able to blast a hole through him is quite the accomplishment. I don't know if I actually explained this in the video. It is an accomplishment that he was able to do that at all, because only the person who was supposed to be the aspect of Earth should have been able to take part in that ritual in the first place. And the fact that Thrall could take part was because he was, a special exception, chosen one. Thrall, if there was any character in WoW who was a Mary Sue, Thrall would be, second choice. The number 1 is always Medan. There's a reason they don't put him in lore in the game or mention him outside of, jokes. They mention him in one of the Chronicle books as 404 because, it's funny, they removed Medan because he's definitely a Mary Sue. And, every definition of the word. Thrall is, a close second to Medan. He's kind of always just good at everything. And, he was able to substitute as the aspect of Earth for well, I guess because he's the main character of WoW to an extent. That's why he was able to do it, because he's just such a good shaman, he can take up the mantle of the aspect of Earth. But that is an accomplishment. That does put him high, even if it's not very satisfying.
That was the thing.
Although this was an incredible temporary power boost with a weapon that kind of completely countered him, which really blurs the line in which power-up should be allowed for this list.
That's not even...
Because this would also let him kill basically everyone else in the list as well.
That's like saying... That's like rating all MMA fighters and then saying, oh, I'm better than all of them because I have a gun. It doesn't work that way. It's not even Thrall's weapon. It doesn't... It's so stupid. Yeah, right.
So, another big reason I include the Dragon Soul was so that I could let the number 2 spot keep his weapon as well. If I allowed the Prophet Velen to have the Vindicar, then Thrall should also be able to use the Dragon Soul too, because that is kind of a big deal. The only reason he was able to use it was because of his special Chosen One status as well. It kind of makes sense, even if it's also... the internal consistency is there, but it's not very satisfying, I agree. I could have also just totally left it off, no one would have cared. That probably would have been for the best.
Thrall doesn't have a fucking chance. Listen, I get Thrall's the most powerful shaman of all time. But what do shamans really do? They do the same thing that druids can do, and they're not as cool. Druids are just cooler. They can do more crazy shit.
I kind of agree. The only real difference between shamans and druids is that shamans basically ask the elements to use their powers, and druids can just do a whole bunch of cool shit.
And Malfurion is so fucking powerful, he's literally got antlers growing out of his head. How the fuck does Thrall have that? Thrall has the exact... His thing's falling out of his head. He's losing his fucking hair. No, man. Sylvanas sized up Thrall.
There are a couple of druid Archdruid Night Elves who also have antlers. That's kind of like a sign of, potential. Like, if you grow antlers, you're probably going to be a really strong druid.
And you know what she sent it to kill Thrall in the cinematic? 3 rogues. That's it. 2 rogues. That's sad, man.
To be fair, 2 rogues probably would have been able to kill Thrall. They can still die to normal beings, even if they occasionally have super powerful moments. Except maybe Malfurion, because he's, constantly strong. See, outside of his temporary avatar of Earth State,
What a bunch
Thrall
of
is
shit.
still pretty strong.
No.
He was trained to be a battle expert his whole life and was given tons of experience in arenas for the amusement of people.
It's very powerful.
And he was able to liberate all of the Orc internment
Thrall
camps
is very
at a young
powerful.
age, and learned how to control
not
the
that
elements in order to add lightning and fire to his entourage of abilities.
Yeah.
Although this would only really put Thrall at the same tier as Vol'jin early in his career.
Yeah.
But by the Cataclysm, he was a world-renowned shaman, and at one point was asked by Ysera, the dragon aspect, to go to a Night Elf village in order to stop a rampaging fire elemental that they weren't able to deal with themselves. And Thrall considered this task to be very easy, to the point where he questioned why they were bothering to send him to do it in the first place. And it ended up being a good bonding opportunity with him and the Night Elves. But this should show a little something about how strong Thrall was in this time period, where something an entire Night Elf village wasn't able to handle was considered a small matter by Thrall. Thrall also fought on the back of Caligos in order to kill scores of Twilight Dragons, when...
That's not a big deal. Number one, that's not a big fucking deal at all.
I mean, killing a whole bunch of dragons is kind of a big deal. Dragons are strong in lore. But again, this is probably just another oversight by Blizzard. They probably had this scene happen where Thrall hops on the back of Caligos to kill a whole bunch of dragons just because it seemed cool. Even though it's a little bit punching above what he's supposed to be capable of. It's quite the accomplishment.
On top of that, he was fighting Garrosh. Garrosh was beating the shit out of him.
That's true.
Garrosh would have beat his fucking ass. And Garrosh is not even as strong of a fighter as Varian was in the story, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's also true. Varian was kind of better than Garrosh normally.
He used to get his ass beat by a warrior.
Yup.
And Thrall had to pull out some fucking magic shit to come out ahead.
The aspects were fighting Mantis. Yeah, magic in Warcraft is OP. A 5-headed dragon who had the powers of all the other aspects. In order to defeat it, they needed to combine the powers of all the aspects, but obviously they couldn't use Deathwing, so they asked Thrall to substitute in his place, and he was able to fulfill the role of the aspect of Earth to everyone's surprise. And when Jaina... And it was because of that little moment with fighting the 5-headed dragon that they knew Thrall could substitute as the aspect of Earth. That's why they had him participate in the ritual with the Dragon Soul. Was trying to destroy Orgrimmar with a gigantic tidal wave made of hundreds of water elementals. Thrall was able to single-handedly hold it back, which was only possible because he had the power to... You see, this right here is the feat of strength that basically also allows him to, kind of have a high spot. Jaina was using a gigantic tidal wave, which was big enough to wipe out an entire, major city. And Thrall kept it back by himself. That is kind of a ridiculous oversight. Similar to Malfurion being able to keep Darkshore from falling into the ocean. That is a ridiculous feat of strength right there. That alone gives Thrall the opportunity to be in the top 10. Although, he also has the whole thing of being the aspect of Earth, substitute light. He doesn't actually have any of the powers of the aspect... Well, I guess he does because he's a shaman. But he doesn't have the powers of Deathwing. Even if he is able to temporarily substitute as the aspect of the Earth a couple of times in lore. But him holding back, the tidal wave. That's a huge feat of strength. To do it himself, if he wanted to, and could manage. And I feel like people don't understand how big of a deal this is. It's such a big deal that it seems like an oversight. They do that sometimes. At Jaina. And Thrall has a whole bunch of other small feats of strength, since he's basically one of the main protagonists of World of Warcraft. So there's many instances of him using power to do stuff. So, a super
No.
powerful shaman who was strong enough
at
to
that.
substitute as the aspect of Earth and hold back a city-destroying tidal wave definitely deserves a spot on this list. Even if in the current timeline he can't actually use his shaman powers right now. They kind of had to nerf Thrall, otherwise he'd just solve all of the world's problems by himself.
Yeah.
Now, that is true. They do kind of have to nerf Thrall, otherwise he would just solve all the problems by himself. Because they occasionally make him too strong. Same with, like, Malfurion and Lillian Voss. They make him do these grandiose things, you know, to, like, show, hey, they're able to do these cool things, but it really just kind of messes with power scaling. Why doesn't Blizzard think of us power scalers when he's doing these, when they're doing these videos, right? I'm gonna skip my segment. I am thankful that Asmongold watches the full ads whenever he watches my videos. That's always nice. The ad companies definitely like that as well. HD 1080p on any mobile device you might have. So, make sure you use my sign up link, crunchyroll.com/hirumaredx to start your 2-week free trial as we continue on with our super powerful characters in WoW.
Okay.
And at number 4, we have Jaina Proudmoore, leader of Kulturas, former leader of Theramore. Definitely, I can't say, I don't think anyone would really argue Jaina's spot. Although looking at his face, maybe he doesn't agree. Jaina's really strong. I'm kind of curious to see his opinions on this. One of the head alliance leaders and one of the most powerful mages living on Azeroth. Now, Jaina has tons of feats.
Bro, I thought Jaina was going to be number 1.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
I was thinking, like, what? Like, Jaina could be number 1. Who the fuck is more powerful than Jaina?
That's true. She totally could be number 1. Like, the top 3 kind of cheat a little bit. Where my ranking system really shows its flaws. I do understand there's flaws in the ranking system, but I can't think of one better. And I'd be really interested if someone can think of a better one. Because, like, that's generally the common thing in power scaling videos. They just use feats of strength. Because, being told how strong a character is without them ever doing anything doesn't really amount to much. Otherwise, Naru would be the strongest. But we all know they're not. So, maybe I don't know, I'm not super into power scaling communities, but I do watch a couple of those videos for fun. If anyone knows a better way to scale these characters, I'm all ears.
Yeah. Give me a fucking break. Yeah, right. Like, yeah, fucking right.
Strength, and even a couple that involve her wielding a powerful artifact.
This is crazy.
Like the time she almost destroyed Orgrimmar with a gigantic tidal wave
Exactly.
thanks to having the focusing iris on her. As she would have gotten away with it too, if it wasn't for Thrall stopping her. Although, to be fair, he was only able to barely stop her, and she could have easily pushed past him if she just decided to kill him to stop his channeling. Yeah, Jaina was using the focusing iris, which was the same super powerful weapon that Garrosh used to blow up her city, in order to, like, control a bunch of water elementals to create a gigantic tidal wave to destroy Orgrimmar, which, again, a super big feat of strength. She was using an item in order to accomplish the goal, but items count for the list, so of course that counts within Jaina. She temporarily had the focusing iris, and was using it to accomplish a feat of strength. So that kind of counts towards her power level, but thankfully, even without the focusing iris, she has so many feats of strength that justify her spot anyway. Which she almost did do before she got stopped by her boyfriend. Jaina is also seen raising a boat from the bottom of the ocean by herself in the Warbringer cinematic.
That's crazy.
Oh yeah, and in the book, where Jaina was using the tidal wave, eventually she stops because Caligos and Thrall are able to talk her out of it. They're not actually able to overpower her or anything. They just kind of ask her nicely to stop and give some big protagonist speeches. Hey, don't do it. You'll be like a monster just like Garrosh and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, yeah, I guess you're right. In the battle for Lordaeron, she's seen controlling the boat with her magical powers in order to single-handedly turn the tide of the battle into the Alliance's
And that's
favor,
number 3?
by temporarily freezing all of the plague and destroying the city. Yeah, Jaina, when she shows up, like, the Alliance should have lost there. Jaina coming over single-handedly turned the tide in their favor. Walls by herself. And she was also the final raid boss in a raid, which is a distinction only given to super powerful people. That's true. As she fights the combined force. I should also say, her final raid boss is probably one of my favorite raids in the game. I really need to make some videos that just put that raid really high on the list, just so I can gush about how good it is. forces of the Horde in the middle of the sea after staging a successful attack on the city and killing the
Garrosh
Horde
wasn't
leader.
that powerful.
Now, Jaina has feats of strength for days. She's another one of the main characters of World of Warcraft, so she appears a lot and often.
100%,
and a lot of her feats of strength are shown very prominent to all players who don't really have to dig around for it in obscure lore books, like you do with the Malfurion or Vol'jin, for example. When it comes to power scaling of characters, Jaina is always powerful.
Stupid.
There are many moments in lore where she just completely destroys small groups of soldiers by herself.
Yeah, because she's a fucking mage.
And
it's
is an
AoE
absolute
farming.
one-man army. The only people that beat Jaina when it comes to strength are ones who have nearly godlike levels of power.
Exactly.
And at number 3, we have Sylvanas Windrunner, former leader of the Horde and Forsaken. Now, Sylvanas has always been a powerful character,
I would say
although
Jaina's
her strength
probably
is
stronger than
inconsistently
Sylvanas.
shown in game, just like a few other parts of Sylvanas' character. Jailer power-up, probably. You see, I don't really remember the feats of strength I gave Sylvanas. I'll have to watch the video. Sylvanas has Banshee powers and can kill people with a single scream. She's also a Dark Ranger, which is basically a normal hunter that has dark magic powers as well. And she's the strongest of the bunch, and was the leader of the Rangers when she was still alive. In Wrath of the Lich King, she's shown to be powerful.
But when she was still alive, you remember Arthas fucking beat the shit out of her? Like, that wasn't even hard, man. Like, the JR has all the powers. It's not even about that. Like, I never really thought... Like, in my mind, I would rank it like Tyrande, fucking Jaina. Like, Tyrande, Malfurion, pretty much the same. Jaina under that, and then Sylvanas. Like, that's what I would... And then, like, Thrall under that. That's what I would rank it in my head.
Enough to fight with Arthas. Tyrande and Malfurion about the same. I would probably say, based on what we've been told, Tyrande's probably stronger than Malfurion now, with her Night Warrior power. But we still don't really know too much about it, but they're going to explore it more in the Shadowlands, so I'm really hoping they give her some feats of strength with that, because it seems like they might do just that by herself for a while, before she realizes that he had gotten even stronger since the last time they met and had to run away. And she's the character the Horde players interact with when you're trying to escape from Arthas during the Halls of Reflection, as you basically just hold off his minions while she destroys gigantic ice walls by herself. Then in the Cataclysm, she got shot in the back of the head by a normal Forsaken and killed. Granted, if Jaina was shot in the back of the head, she would die too, but this doesn't look good for power scaling, and will definitely lead to a lot of people to think Sylvanas is a lot weaker than she's supposed to be.
It's hard to know.
Although the writers probably forgot she's supposed to be stronger.
He did
than
have a
that,
gun,
too.
though.
During Legion, she's shown fighting Gen Greymane over a lantern. While Gen Greymane isn't able to kill her, he is able to thwart her plans and steal away her magic lantern.
Like, I'm losing to a dog. Like, imagine getting outmaneuvered by a dog.
Yeah, this...
Like, and this is supposed to be like our fucking, tactician general here. Loses to, like, it's a big dog. But it's still a motherfucking dog. Like, give me a break, man.
Even though she's supposed to be way stronger than him. During the short novel, A Good War, Sylvanas is the sole reason Malfurion runs away in Ashenvale whenever they're having altercations. And she's the only member of the Horde who was able to match him in power, and was constantly hunting him down the entire time, and was even shown throwing him through the trees in a few occasions. During the end of the BFA campaign, Sylvanas is shown easily defeating Saurfang without any effort. Although that's not really out of the ordinary. She was supposed to be that strong baseline. And then during the thematic for Shadowlands...
Well, what do you mean? Like, Saurfang's an old motherfucking man. Like, that's yeah, right. Like, it wasn't even hard. Yeah, fucking right. Of course Saurfang was gonna lose.
And Sylvanas is shown easily defeating Bolvar. And it's also implied that she defeated all of the minions on top of the tower, and that they just cut to the part where Bolvar... Oh yeah, there's when she went over to fight Bolvar, she did also defeat his immediate army. They don't really show that prominently in the cinematic, but there is enough context to show, like, hey, there's a little time skip. Sylvanas wiped out his entire army, which is actually kind of an accomplishment, but only kind of, because it's not like he had his best minions with him. And Sylvanas were having
trash
the final
mobs,
bout.
so it doesn't matter.
And then after, basically, they're just trash mobs. It doesn't really matter. After she destroys the Hemlow Domination, we basically learn that she had been gaining power from the Jailer the whole time.
Yeah, of course.
A super powerful being who has mastery over death and is possibly in the same league of power as the Titans. So if Sylvanas was already supposed to be on the same tier as Malfurion, and then received a super boost from the jailer, that would put her
Damn, she's hot. Like, why didn't they make her look like this in WoW? Like, she's way fucking hotter here. Holy shit.
Really above Jaina in power scaling. But that's all I would bump her up in the rating to.
Yeah,
we still don't really know exactly how much stronger she's gotten thanks to the jailer's power.
Yeah,
but it's safe to say that she is stronger than Jaina now, considering in some of the Shadowlands beta stuff, Jaina, Thrall, Tyrande, and a few other faction leaders were captured and pulled into the maw by Sylvanas. The only two faction leaders who could beat out Sylvanas are maybe not that much stronger. If anything, the top 3 could all be about equal in power scaling.
Okay,
so
that's number 2.
Keep that in mind as I go on to the next 2 spots. Okay, now that I'm watching this back, she doesn't really have too many, grandiose feats of strength after getting her jailer powers, other than beating up Malfurion. Sure, Sourfang helped by throwing an axe in his back, but they were to a point where, a slightly above average soldier like Sourfang was able to turn the tide of the battle. And that itself is kind of her feat of strength, the only one that really matters, because she also beat up Bolvar, which I guess counts as a feat of strength. I mean, it is a feat of strength, but is it really more powerful than Jaina's feat of strength? I'm not really sure thinking back on it. It's another one of those cases where we're told she's a lot stronger, and we are actually shown her doing some powerful stuff, like easily beating up Bolvar. So I guess that kind of counts, but really not super consistent on my part. I definitely think she deserves a high spot. That's why I put her higher on the list. Even though I didn't put, Tyrande higher, even though we're told she's stronger too. So, watching this back, that might be a little bit of a hypocritical stance. And at number 2, we have Velen, leader of the Draenei on the Alliance side. Now, Velen is a total badass. I love him. I can't, I definitely have a Horde bias, but I do like, a lot of the Alliance characters and stuff. I just don't really play Alliance. I play Horde mostly. That's why I know mostly about Horde stuff. But that doesn't mean I hate the Alliance either. I like, Jaina and Gen Greybane. They're like my 2 favorite characters from the Alliance. And I also really like Velen too. Just because he's so strong. I love him. His advantage with his weaponry. I just love how WoW weapons are kind of internally not consistent. They have spaceships that shoot orbital strikes, and they're also like in medieval fantasy where they use swords and armor to fight each other. I just love how ridiculous it is and that it kind of makes internal sense. One of those who's on this list thanks to powerful items he has under his control. In addition to the fact that Velen's baseline is also pretty strong too.
Yeah, okay.
His own feats of strength include when the Legion was attacking his home city, he was able to single-handedly create an invulnerable barrier that killed any demon that came near it.
I mean, Valen's I take a piss. Valen's a fucking badass, dude. But let's be honest. If he's such a fucking badass, why didn't he just kill Jaden on his own? I think he'd be number 4, 3 or 4. I'm so torn on this one, man.
He is also a super powerful healer who's teaching the leader of the Alliance how to better handle his light powers. Okay. He is well loved by the Naaru, who are super powerful agents of the light and are probably descendants of the Light Lords, and most likely the source of all light magic on Azeroth. During the Mage Tower scenario for the tanks, Velen is there to help tanks kill the boss. He is also shown killing a boss level character by himself as he tries to run away by just dispelling the invulnerable CC on himself through sheer force of will. While the players are fighting the Avatar of Sargeras, Velen alongside Illidan and Khadgar are fighting Kil'jaeden. And at the end of Tomb of Sargeras...
That's fucking Illidan doing it. I would say Illidan
doing it.
Illidan fucking deleted a Naaru. That's way Yeah, fucking right, dude. Naaru was supposed to be the most powerful fucking... that's Illidan 100%. Velen was just back there who gives a fuck?
He runs off by himself to confront Kil'jaeden. and you see him fighting off hordes of demons by himself alongside powerhouses like Illidan during the final fight.
Yeah.
In fact, he was so capable that he was able to change the mind of Kil'jaeden, who had given up the hope that Sargeras could possibly be defeated someday.
Too late.
Something which he previously thought was
too
impossible.
late. Fucking too late.
An alternate
though.
universe Velen was strong enough that his sacrifice was able to purify a corrupted Naru. And to top it all off, Velen has orbital strikes. Velen had control of the Vindikar, which was used to great effect in
So Velen could get rid of the corrupted Naru, but Illidan disenchants it, and Velen's that powerful? Think about how powerful Illidan is.
Yeah, Illidan, if he qualified for the list, would definitely be in the top 10. Yes, in order to do tactical orbital strikes. Basically, Velen could have killed anyone on Azeroth at any moment's notice as long as they weren't underground, because the power of an orbital strike from a spaceship is kind of unbeatable. Although, canonically, the Vindikar burned out its power matrix when it blasted open the entrance to Antorus, the Burning Throne.
Yeah.
So its orbital strike capabilities are actually not functional during Battle for Azeroth, which is why it was only used to transport troops during the war, and is kind of loosely under control of the Lightforged Draenei now in Tyrande. Although borrowed power is totally okay on this list, even if they only had it for a limited amount of time, so it still counts as part of Velen's arsenal in determining his power scaling. Well, here's another instance of a Naru dying really easily.
Okay.
So, Velen is a combination of being physically powerful, blessed by the light, and having the best technological advantage over anyone. So, Velen could have easily taken the number 1 spot on this list if it wasn't for Garrosh quite possibly cheating so hard. And at number 1, we have Y'Shaarj-infused Garrosh. Garrosh was a former leader of the Horde and temporarily fused himself with the most powerful Old God, and required the combined might of all of the Horde and Alliance leaders plus a group of legendary adventurers in order to take him down.
No, like 100% no. Like, what about Arthas?
Arthas wasn't a leader.
I mean, the thing is, if you go by, because like Arthas was like the prince, right, and he killed the king, so that means Arthas would have been the fucking king, right? Because if King Tyrannus dies, then Arthas is the king. You see what I mean? Faction leaders. Well, isn't he the leader of Lordaeron? That makes him fuck. I guess. Like, all right. Maybe it doesn't really count, but like I don't know. All right, whatever. Okay.
As you know, adventurers in lore. You know, I know Garrosh at number 1 doesn't feel good because he only had the power for such a small amount of time, and he doesn't have any feats of strength worthy of the list outside of that, but he was really strong during that really limited amount of time. Or are actually a thing, and supposed to be super powerful beings. Basically, all of the other previous people on this list were required in order to help take down Garrosh.
Yeah.
And there's even a point in his fight where he shows you a vision of the future in which he wins, and successfully kills all of the faction leaders by himself, and impaled them on spikes in Stormwind.
That's true.
So, if it wasn't for the help of adventurers, they would have been screwed.
Yeah.
And with his Y'Shaarj-infused body, it's very reasonable to assume he'd be able to survive an orbital strike. And Garrosh also had lots of good technology. He completely embraced goblin technology created by Blackfuse.
Yep.
And in fact, it was thanks to this technology that he was able to create the Iron Horde into the threat it became. He literally just brought all of the goblins.
Literally wasn't a threat at all. I mean, like, it really wasn't. That was like yeah, right.
That's true. The Warlords of Draenor was such a wasted potential. There's so much they had planned that they didn't do, which is such a shame. Like, Warlords of Draenor had the potential to be the best expansion with all the stuff they had planned, and they just kind of cut it short to work on Legion, which is such a shame. There should be a timeline out there where Blizzard actually put the effort they wanted to into Warlords of Draenor. It would have been fun to see how that turned out. But, you know, in lore, they're supposed to be more of a threat, but even I kind of agree. Like, yeah, the Iron Horde weren't really that big of a deal.
Yeah,
when
fucking
technology
right,
with
dude.
him to allow him to steamroll everything, and became a legitimate threat to the real world.
Right.
So, Garrosh has the benefits of good technology and borrowed power, and his borrowed power was just shown to be a lot stronger than everyone else's so far.
Of course, because
So,
it's an
for
old
now,
god.
he takes number 1 spot on this. Yeah, his borrowed power is the strongest old god, to be more specific. List. Although, like I said in the Sylvanas segment, it could easily be argued that the top 3 spots are all pretty within line of each other.
Know, man.
Because we don't know the full potential of Sylvanas' power, and orbital strikes by Velen were only around for a short time. But then again, so was the infusion of Y'Shaarj with Garrosh, so that
Yeah.
doesn't really matter much. Alright, and that's the list. Do you think there's any other faction leaders who are much stronger that should have made this list? If so, I'd love to hear about why and their accomplishments down in the comments, as the number 10 spot is probably hotly debated. And ideas for future videos just like this one.
Okay.
And also, did you know only 32% of people who watch these videos are actually subscribed to the channel?
I'm gonna link the video. We're gonna talk about this. All right, we'll talk about this real quick. Okay, let me just do the Garrosh video first. Okay.
Did you know
Oh, was
that
the Garrosh video
was
in
the
here too?
greatest war chief of all time?
I did know that.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, I guess that's the end of this segment. Anyways, so that's the video. A reaction to the reaction. This would probably be a lot better if I actually used a webcam, except I don't do that in my videos because I don't think it would add anything to my videos. So, final conclusions. Yeah, he brought up a lot of good points that I wasn't expecting. There was a couple of them that were like, Scarlet Crusade not being strong. They are kind of strong, even if they're not really shown that in game. Like in lore and in game is a good example of how they're so different by just using the Scarlet Crusade as an example. And mostly everything else, I would still probably, if I were to remake this list and order it about, I would probably just put Malfurion higher on the list and move Thrall down the list. And also, maybe I guess fix the part where Sylvanas is high because of her potential, whereas Malfurion, where I don't have Tyrande high because of her lack of potential. Not lack of potential, because she doesn't have feats of strength. I don't know. It's hard to order these things. I did my best with the knowledge I had, which was obviously incomplete for Malfurion. So, if I were to reorder this list, Malfurion would probably be up at number 2. I still think Garrosh is the strongest, because Garrosh, Y'Shaarj infused Garrosh is kind of up there. And then I would have Thrall basically I don't know, his feats of strength kind of speak for himself. It doesn't feel good to put him high, but the tidal wave thing is a ridiculous feat of strength. He deserves a high spot, maybe below Tyrande. Maybe, how about that? Tyrande can go up a spot. And Thrall would still be above Bolvar and Lillian Voss. The number 10 spot doesn't matter. I even say at the end of the video. That's how I would fix it. Like, the top 10 is still the same. I'd just kind of reorder it a little bit. Which isn't half bad, I think. Like, for a power scaling video, the fact that I would just kind of reorder a couple of spots already in the video, rather than add things that I missed. I can take the L on that. That's totally fine. Alright. And I guess the final other things, I do, Asmongold watches a couple of my videos, and I'm totally fine with it. I actually kind of like watching his reactions to the videos I make. So the only reason I chose this one was because he had kind of a negative reaction to this one. And I got a lot of negative comments on the video itself afterwards, which is fine because I expect that with power scaling videos. I just thought this would be a fun thing to kind of respond to a lot of it, because I got a whole bunch of comments that I can't possibly respond to in the comments, because a lot of them were just very obviously by people who don't know the lore very well. So I would, in order to respond to those kinds of comments, you'd have to kind of explain to them the lore and then talk about why what they said doesn't make any sense, which is such a huge waste of time that it's much better to just make a video like this where people can just yell at me in the comments here.